Dr. King once said that it's all right to tell a man to lift himself up by his own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he should lift himself up by his own bootstraps. The reality in this country is that not everyone has had the opportunity to reach their dreams. In fact, in some families, the achievement of the American dream is generational. That is to say that the parents and the grandparents don't always make it, but they do the best they can, and they struggle, and they work hard so that their children and their grandchildren can have an opportunity to do better than they did. And that fact was true for my family. When I was born, my mother was young, and she wasn't ready to take care of a son. And my father was an alcoholic, and he was deep in the throes of the disease that would take his life before I was 17 years old. So when I was 2 weeks old, my grandmother, a strong Hispanic woman named Beatriz Anaya, brought me to her home. And my grandfather asked her, what are we going to do with this baby? Now you got to understand that between the two of them, they had already raised 7 of their own kids, so it was a fair question. My grandmother told him simply, vamos a cuidarlo, we're going to take care of him. Put it another way, we're going to raise him. And they did. My grandmother taught me Spanish as my first language because that's what she spoke. You see, my family's been in this country and we've been Americans for generations, but my family comes from the town of Carnuel up near the Sandia Mountains, where everyone there in her generation spoke Spanish as a first language. You can imagine in elementary school the confusion on my teachers' faces when they realized that I didn't speak English as a first language. Now, when I was 10 years old, my grandfather passed away, and so my grandmother had to go to work to make ends meet. She took a job at the Presbyterian Hospital. As an Hispanic woman who didn't speak, read, or write much in English, her options were limited. So the job she took was as a cleaning lady, working for $5 an hour, working the night shift from 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. in the morning to take care of us. We didn't have much. We lived in a small house that my grandpa built. Our second bathroom was an outhouse. To make ends meet, my grandmother supplemented our food with handouts from the storehouse down the street on Broadway, and many of our clothes came from Goodwill. Now, even though my grandmother worked the night shift, she always got up in the morning to make sure I had breakfast and make sure my clothes were clean for school. If people can say about me that I work hard, it's because she did. And if people can say about me that I'm a responsible person, it's because she was. She taught me that. If people can say about me that I'm a good father to my 3 children and a good husband to my wife, Tori, it's because she taught me that. Now, I gotta be honest with you, people can also say about me that I'm ornery and I'm stubborn. She didn't teach me that. I got that all by myself. I want to talk to you a little bit about that stubbornness. I'm a proud graduate, as has been mentioned, from Rio Grande High School. It was a good school with good teachers and administrators that cared about the kids, as evidenced by the fact that 2 of our scholarship recipients here today are from Rio Grande. Rio Grande provided several of my high-achieving classmates the foundation they needed to go to schools like Harvard and Yale and Georgetown. But the real deal is that I wasn't one of those high-achieving students back then. My grandmother told me to go to college, and she wanted me to go to college, but my interests were otherwise. I wanted to go to the military. And so I told her, Grandma, I'd already gone to school for 12 years and I'm tired. At the time, I carried a 2.4 GPA and had never gotten a grade higher than a C in any class other than PE. So to me, at the time, college sounded difficult. So I joined the Marine Corps and I left for boot camp 2 weeks after graduation from high school. And I'll never regret my decision to join the Marines because at the time I needed the direction and I needed the discipline and I needed everything that the Marine Corps provided, which was the ability to believe in something bigger than myself. But I can tell you that on my first day, the honest truth of boot camp, as I was standing there on those yellow footprints in San Diego and a drill instructor was yelling at me in combinations of curse words that I didn't even think were possible, I started to think to myself, maybe college isn't so bad. So as soon as I was able, I started taking classes at community college and I got my first A. And I kept taking classes. And when my 4-year commitment was up, I went to UNM for undergrad and my grandmother got to see me graduate from college. And I went to Chicago, Kent for law school, and 3 years after that, she came to see me in Chicago and got to see me graduate from law school. It was only the second time in her life that she even rode an airplane. And she told me she was proud of me. And I told her I was proud of her because at the end of the day, I'll borrow a line from Julian Castro, who was one of the keynote speakers at the convention this summer. He said, my grandmother stood behind the mop so that one day I could stand behind this podium. And that's true. As an added bonus that day, she not only got to see me graduate and get my law school diploma, she got to see the future president of the United States, because the guy that gave the keynote address at my graduation was a skinny kid from Illinois who's probably taking this oath of office of president for the second time, right about now. I guess as far as keynote speakers go, you guys got the short end of the stick. Now, I'll never forget what President Obama talked about that day. Some of that message is relevant now, so I'll share it with you. He also quoted Dr. King, and he told us that injustice everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. He talked about how some young people these days suffered from what he called a poverty of ambition. We have a fear of reaching out beyond ourselves, reaching out beyond taking care of our families, when the simple truth is that we have an obligation to reach out to everyone who's not as fortunate as we are, to help everyone achieve success. Now, although I'm nowhere near the speaker that Dr. King was and that President Obama is, I want to bring that same message to you here today, and to you students who we are honoring, because that's what Dr. King was about. I didn't share my story with you here today because I think it makes me special. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. I shared it with you because I think I'm not special. I want you all to understand that if an ordinary kid from the South Valley can go from poverty and not having parents to being the first African-American shareholder at a large law firm, in my view, the largest and the best law firm in the state, then anybody's dreams are possible. Sometimes I'm asked, how did I pull it off and how did I do it? I think Dr. King had something to say that's important about that too. He said, the major problem in life is learning how to handle costly interruptions. The door that slammed shut, the plan that got sidetracked, the marriage that failed, or the lovely poem that didn't get written because somebody knocked at the door. I think what he was saying was the key to life is learning how to deal with the challenges. Because for me, the biggest challenge wasn't poverty, and it wasn't growing up without parents, and it wasn't anything else. The biggest obstacle to my success was me. Before I could achieve anything, I had to get out of my own way. I had to stop being my own worst enemy. I had to visualize a goal and a dream that was bigger than myself and bigger than anything that I had seen accomplished growing up. I had to overcome the poverty of ambition that President Obama was talking about. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that inequality and injustice doesn't exist anymore in this country, because I think we all know that that's not true. What I'm saying is that the generations before us have made the sacrifices so that we might all have a chance at the American dream. The generations before us have done the heavy lifting and braved the beatings and the dogs and the fire hoses, and for some, like Dr. King, have given their life so that we may all have a chance at something better. Dr. King's dream was that one day all children would grow up to have a chance to be judged by the content of their character instead of their skin color. He once said, the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that's the goal of a true education. And you all are going to have challenges on the path towards making your dreams come true. How you overcome those challenges, how you overcome those obstacles and keep moving forward, that'll be the true test of character, the character Dr. King was talking about. Now it's up to all of you to do the heavy lifting. I can tell you without a doubt that I owe my success to the sacrifices and hard work of many, from people like Dr. King, to Thurgood Marshall, to Cesar Chavez, to my grandmother, to my teachers, and the sacrifices that my wife Tori, who's sitting back there with our oldest son Alexander, makes every day so that I can continue to live my dream. Now I'll tell you, my wife Tori, she's a lawyer too, and if it's one of my goals to be the best lawyer in the state, I can tell you that given the grace with which she raises our 3 children and is a full-time mother and a full-time lawyer and a full-time wife, I'm not even the best lawyer in my own house. Now I'll close with this about Dr. King. He once said, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep streets even as Michelangelo painted, or Beethoven composed music, or Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who did his job well. To the young students who we're here honoring today, my challenge is this for you. You need to strive for that kind of excellence in whatever you choose to do, whether you want to be a doctor or an engineer or a teacher, or God help you, even a lawyer. Be the best at what you do. Never be satisfied with where you're at in your craft and in your life, and use every bit of that vessel of talent that you've been given to help yourselves and help your family and help your community. Because that's what we owe to those who came before us, and that's how we keep Dr. King's dream alive. Thank you.
I believe that you'll all agree that was just awe-inspiring. We thank you so much for sharing your life. And certainly, his vocation with us. Thank you again very much, and it gives me a great honor and pleasure to present you with not a real expensive plaque, but it comes from our heart.